All right, everyone, it's March 18th. Yesterday we had our next slew of primaries, including one of the biggest states, which is Florida, several hundred delegates. Joe Biden won all three. Now, in Arizona, it was actually closer than the polls suggested. He won by about, I think, 10 points or even high single digits. I don't think all of the votes are in. Illinois won by a large margin. Florida won by an insurmountable margin. And this is exactly what I predicted would happen. And if Ohio had held their vote and not possibly unconstitutionally decided to cancel their primaries until June, for which, by the way, they're going to lose a considerable sum of their delegates. Good, by the way. The DNC should definitely continue to crack down. In fact, it should ban these states altogether from holding a primary if they want to delay. This is some shifty business. They have months-long debates over the order that these primaries are going to go in, and then these states want to pull this. If I were Tom Perez and had some balls, which I know he doesn't, I would tell the states, okay, he can hold a primary later, but you don't get delegates. Absolutely not. And you're not going to have any superdelegates allocated to you either. We're going to strip those too. Fuck you. We'll give them to the rest of the states that are actually functioning properly and not acting like a bunch of fucking fear-mongering bullshit. Anyway, all the Bernie fans are salty. Oh, the salt is flowing even more than after Super Tuesday, ironically, because you see, after Super Tuesday, Sanders had been, curb stomped. But he won a few states. Today he didn't win any. He came kind of almost close in Arizona, which, by the way, was the smallest delegate total. He lost by over 30 points in the state of Florida. He didn't win a single county. In a couple of places, he was behind Michael Bloomberg in third place. Michael Bloomberg, who, by the way, dropped out a while ago, endorsed Biden and isn't in the running. Michael Bloomberg, who is one of the least liked figures within U.S. politics at this point. Bernie Sanders has lost. The Bernie fans at this time need to put on their adult undergarments and stop shitting themselves and admit that it's not the DNC's fault that Bernie Sanders goddamn sucks. It's for several reasons. Number one, his shtick is old compared to 2016. In 2016, he was younger and he was more energetic. That's simply, he was more charismatic and more able to sort of carry the fight out there and do the thing. When he lost and dropped out and sold out and endorsed the establishment, a lot of his more diehard fans said fuck Bernie Sanders, and a lot of them didn't get back on board here for 2020 because they speculated he'd do the same goddamn thing. And he will. He will drop out at some point. He's already said that he'll drop out if Biden gets a majority, which it looks like he might get fairly soon because he completely crushed him in Florida. He'll drop out, he will endorse Biden, and it'll be hilarious. And a lot of his fans this time, unlike in 2016 when 90-some-odd% of them ended up biting the bullet for Hillary, I have a feeling that threshold will be a lot lower. Another reason is that Bernie Sanders is a socialist. You see, Florida voters don't like socialism, as you see now acutely, what exactly as I predicted. The threshold was on the upper end of what polling suggested, actually, for a gap, so Biden should be happy about that. He walks away with something like an extra 100-delegate lead just out of Florida, based on the totals that are there. Bernie Sanders struggling to be in the 20s. I mean, it's fantastic. Anyway, another reason is his age. He's 78 years old and he just had a heart attack. Not the greatest idea to put him up in front of Trump. Now, a lot of these Bernie fans, and I don't disagree with them, when the Bernie fans say, well, this ensures Trump 2020 because fuck Biden, I won't vote for him. Well, 90% of you will, but some of you are being serious. I won't vote for Biden. Biden is demented. Biden has shitty ideas. Yeah, some of the time, some of his ideas are. Here's, though, what you should be even more afraid of. Joe Biden taking elements of Bernie's platform and incorporating them. Because it's going to look inauthentic, because he will be clearly pandering and lying. The Bernie fans will crucify him for this. I see, like Joe Kennedy and all of these morons out there, Kamala Harris, they are all trying to push an extreme far-left agenda down Joe Biden's throat. They're trying to take the elements of Bernie Sanders' platform that are causing him to lose against a man with dementia, a nostalgia candidate with a terrible track record dating to the 70s. They're trying to take the worst elements of Sandersism, incorporate that with the worst possible optics candidate, and put that on a stage in front of Donald Trump. Oh my goodness, how cocky they are getting. I think the problem is this. A lot of these people who are so boisterous right now in regards to these proposals that they're making are doing it because of coronavirus and the economic downturn. I do not speculate that an economic downturn in and of itself alone is even going to sink Trump's response. He's getting reasonably high marks for the coronavirus response, and I have a feeling that those marks will grow over time. Why do you think he's getting out in front of it? Because he's hedging his bets on the fact that before November, the number of new cases starts decreasing, people go back to work, and the problem largely solves itself because of nature. He's probably right. When that begins to happen, as Trump becomes more likely to be elected, the markets are going to soar. Part of the reason right now that the markets are souring isn't because of the virus itself. It's because it makes Trump look more politically vulnerable, and people are worried, if you have any money, about a Democrat coming in there and enacting some sort of stupid socialism that cracks the economy. I mean on a more fundamental level, like a recession level. What's happened right now is just a general downturn because of a combination of panic and political uncertainty. Right before an election, in the middle of the primary is not a great time to have an epidemic, definitely and admittedly. But that would lead to structural damage because the Democrats don't know how to govern an economy. They've shown this repeatedly. The Democrats set up the capability for the economy to collapse later, and then usually a Republican gets in and takes the blame. That seems to be sort of a pattern that happens. Trump, I don't think, is willing to play that fucking game. He basically ripped off elements of the Democrats' own platform and undercut them. Watch what Bernie Sanders did almost immediately when Trump said, well, we're going to give every American $1,000 to stimulate the economy, which, by the way, I oppose. I oppose stimulus. W tried this. It doesn't work. It's just a dumb throwaway. Most people squander that on Chinese-made goods, which I think is the crappiest thing ever. I think there should be a caveat. Not a penny of that money is allowed to be spent on anything made in China. How about we do that? Okay, then you can pass your stimulus. Bernie Sanders immediately came and said, well, I think we should give $2,000 a month for the duration of this crisis to every American. Oh, we talk about pandering. That's also known as communism, by the way. That would definitely level the playing field for anyone that's not super wealthy. When you compact the poorest with the working class and the lower middle class, you just create a much larger lower class. They're still poor. They're on the bottom echelon of society. Sort of what a $15 an hour minimum wage would do, actually. Economic Scientology. It's worse than voodoo economics because it's not even interesting. It takes even more stupidity to take it seriously. That's Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders' revolution never materialized in the first place because his voting bloc was comprised largely of people who exist in their basement on Twitter and people who are very, very young, and younger people just don't go to the polls as much. When these people are saying, well, the DNC is rigging things, they shouldn't have had these primaries due to coronavirus, what do you expect? You're going to cancel the election? Well, they should just nominate Bernie because it makes us feel better about things. Joe Biden is just a bad person and he can't win. That's not the way that representative politics work, dude. Is this Babby's first election? What the fuck is wrong with you? Why don't you go to a part of the world where they don't have elections, and then you'll see basically what you're arguing for. You're arguing for a de facto socialist one-party state, some of these people. No, there's nothing fanatic about that. Then there was some dumb Bernie fan there, and his tweets, I think, got removed. I doubt that he's been suspended. I'll check later. Named Yusuf, who was actually rambling about the revolution and people should shoot cops and stupid shit like that. And he was followed by the Gravel Institute, which is actually a non-profit, so-called, very far left. They brand themselves as progressive, but they never disavowed. I wonder why. They probably love political violence. They just have enough finesse not to get so hot under the collar they call it for it themselves. So usually what happens with these people, they tend to be a bit craven in nature. Bernie Sanders fans need to scoot aside now and join the club of people who, understand politics a little bit, because Bernie doesn't. Bernie's never won an election that didn't involve the far left being the voting bloc. He's never had to actually pitch himself to a normal group of people. And many of the Bernie fans aren't even technically like Democrats anyway. A lot of these people have like hammer and sickle avatars and shit like that. That's never been the Democratic Party's platform. I agree, it's definitely far left. It's definitely a far leftist platform. The Democrats push heavy centrality. You've had candidates try to nationalize key industries before. They support mountains of regulation. They go beyond the neoliberal in many respects, I would definitely say. But they're not a socialist party. And Bernie Sanders is still well outside of the Overton window. I think if Bernie Sanders were nominee, I would declare Trump to be the victor right away. There wouldn't even be an election, in my mind. It wouldn't even be a contest. Joe Biden is supposedly more capable of doing things. I question whether he'll make it through the general without either having an aneurysm or having to step back due to dementia, to tell the truth. The man's clearly lost it. He's clearly insane. He tells the Bernie fans, this is really funny, he doesn't, oh, I hear you. Nobody's taking in Joe. You're pandering because you know that Bernie Sanders can't win. You know that you're the nominee now unless you drop dead tomorrow while campaigning. And since you can't hold rallies in the normal way, I wouldn't worry too much. He doesn't have to travel as much if he's telecommuting to his rallies at this point. I think Trump definitely has an advantage on that. He sets up a live Twitter feed, 1 million people show up. If Joe Biden does it, it'll be the janitor will be watching from the next room, essentially. It won't be even online. Joe Biden is trying to grift now. The problem is that Joe Biden, the reason why he's more palatable is because he's more moderate. Because he's not insane, at least in the platform sense. If he begins incorporating aspects of the Sanders platform, he will quickly realize the Sanders fans won't be appeased unless he takes the entirety of Bernie Sanders' platform, copy-pastes it onto his own, eliminates his own platform in the process, and becomes a demented version of Bernie Sanders. That's the only way he's going to get them to be excited for him. Offering someone the moon on a stick and giving them an asteroid instead, well, they still got an asteroid on the stick, but it's not the moon. You just promised them something much greater, and they don't get it. And so they're whining little babies, the Bernie babies. That's about all. Peace out.